Hey, Andy, it's great to see your face.
Oh, it's so good to see you too, Whitney, because we get a chance to connect digitally, but face to face is rare, and I'm excited to get to chat with you.
Yeah, we haven't done this in almost 3 years, I think, because we did a video. We did that one of those Instagram lives that got so hot during the pandemic, like right when the pandemic hit.
Yeah, I can't believe it's been that long. Honestly, there's like a meme with a guy closing his eyes. Oh no, his eyes are open and it says 2019, and then he closes his eyes and then he opens his eyes again and it says 2023. And that's how I feel. Like it was just a blank.
It was, or it's a blur for me. I mean, it seems like almost in those 3 years, it was like a lifetime. I mean, so much changed, but also so much was frozen in time too. I don't know. It was just, time was just very weird. And I feel like my memory has just been trying to recover ever since because just such a brain fog during that period. And then right before it hit, well, I got to see you in real life at the trials where you ran by, and my daughter was like, "Oh, look at her hair, mom." And I was like, "I know her, Auntie. Go, go, go. And you look so good. Your hair looks so good."
She's so sweet. Eleanor's like, I remember that. I take that with me and I treasure her little compliment there. That was great.
Yes, because you were going up one of the million hills on that course at the trials.
Yes, it was challenging. So I'm glad to know my break.
You're gonna have to do like an Instagram reel that kind of clues people into how to do that hairstyle, because I know it's what with the braid coming over. I know Shalane wears it, and I'm just not good with hair. So you need to teach us.
The reason I started doing that, and I bet a lot of listeners can relate if they have long hair, is because my hair gets into extreme rat's nest.
Oh, just very
So I do
naughty.
think it's a running hack for long haired girls because, and boy, I mean, men too, I guess, if they have long. It keeps it from getting wild. So, it was more out of necessity than any kind of fashion.
Oh, I did not know that. See, I don't have a lot of hair. So
Okay.
my hair has always been thin. So that's why I've never had to do that. I'm fine to just do the ponytail, and it hardly ever get like every once in a while it'll get caught in my necklace or something like that.
Okay.
It's not hard to deal with. So, okay. Since we've known each other, so you ran the trials, and then I mean, that whole time you were battling a hip injuries, I should say. And it was, if we could kind of backtrack and talk about, first of all, running has been a part of your life for a very long time. I believe your mom got you into running.
Yeah, good
Yeah.
memory.
Yeah. So if you could talk about how you got into running, and then just give us a quick overview of your hip injuries, because I know you lived with it and you ran with it and you ran with pain for a very long time, and then finally decided to hang up your shoes for a while and get it taken care of with surgeries.
Yeah, so to give you the quick version, yeah, my mom got me into running. It was a negotiation. She would pay for travel soccer if I also put some skin in the game. So she was
Oh.
putting money in the game. I was putting my skin in the game by running when she asked me to run, which was not like every day, but when she wanted a running buddy, essentially. And then I had to touch the ball every day in some capacity. So I had an investment because she was putting in an investment. And I made the teams because I was average, but I would run that mile run that they do in the beginning. They time you in the beginning of tryouts. And because I would do well with that, I would make the teams even though I was completely average. So I didn't do bad enough for them to be like, oh, she shouldn't play, but I was not really that good at soccer.
I am so similar. I made the travel soccer team, the travel basketball team, and it was really only because I was speedier than the other girls. My
Uh-huh.
coordination has always been below average.
Same. So I then started enjoying running and I just really found it to be good for me. I'm a little hyperactive and I also have, since a young age, had some anxiety, and this helped me cope and get the wiggles out. And it was always refreshing to me psychologically. And it kind of brought along a lot of friendships. And also, I just loved the actual movement, you know? And so let's fast forward. I did it in college, and then just go to the injury stuff because I feel
Well, I
what
mean,
we're
I
talking
feel
about.
like we shouldn't gloss over
Okay.
your achievements because you're a very talented runner.
Oh, thank you. Now it's a small university and I did middle distance, but I did a lot of events because our school was small. So we points. It's all about the points. So I would do the steeplechase at conference, and I would do the 1500, and then I would do the
Oh,
5K.
wow.
Yeah, so there's a lot of racing, and I kinda overdid it in college. I was doing too much intensity, not enough recovery, and I just kinda ran all out all the time. So now that I know more about the science of running, I know how I that's why I've gotten so much growth post-collegiately is because I've learned to listen to my body, but also give myself space for adaptations and not always do running 100% all the time. Yeah, and then it brings me to I ran a little bit post collegiately for an elite running group called Playmakers, and I just pretty much did their cross country race that they did as a team, which was the USATF Club Nationals, and then I would do sometimes some other team runs, but I wasn't like with the team. I wasn't training with them. I did it on my own. So it's pretty casual. When I had my first child, I decided I was gonna do a marathon for the first time, so I didn't couldn't compare myself. I
I see,
wanted
okay.
a new thing and
Smart.
did a lot of running with that jogger, and I know you have posts all about the stroller running, and it was a lifeline for me, that and the YMCA. At that point, I was really just again, building the musculoskeletal. I was not in deep training. I didn't do much intensity. I had some neuromuscular stimulation, but pretty much I was doing day to day what I needed, what fit into my life. And it went a lot better than I expected for my first marathon. I ran 2:55 and I enjoyed the whole thing. It was one of those like rare instances where you get done and you're like, I could keep going. And it was so amazing,
Oh,
which
wow.
was, yeah, it gave me a false impression of how hard the marathon could be because I was like, whoa, like this was so fun.
You probably felt very free too because you were used to running with the stroller.
True. Yes. I did 2 20-mile runs with the stroller
Wow.
leading into that
Okay, I mean,
marathon.
that's impressive on, like, many different levels.
No, I just ran, however slow I needed to run. I don't even think I was wearing a watch during that cycle at
Wow.
all. So I just took it one day at a time, one moment at a time. And so I enjoyed my first marathon experience and I was hooked.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
say, I mean, you're running blind and you're running for the, like, pure joy of running, and then, "Oh, I ran a 250." Well, how about that I ran a 2:55? I mean, what? Plus, I'm guessing you probably even went in, like, not even with a time goal.
I didn't, but towards the end, like Zach was not coaching me at that time. Zach is my husband. He is my current coach. He had refused to coach me in for that year.
Really?
He was very difficult for our marriage. He's like, Andy, you just need to get back into this thing at your own leisure. And also because he thought that we would have his tiffs,
I mean,
which
I
he's
could
not
see
wrong.
that. Yeah, I could see that, especially you re-entering, and he is such a fast and it seems like kinda hardcore runner. Like, he's very I mean, for somebody to be that fast and talented, like, he is very dedicated to the sport.
He's very dedicated, but as I found, it had been a lot better than I anticipated, and actually, I had better than he anticipated. He thought that I would give him some more pushback than I have, but
Okay.
was like, "Oh," because and he said before, he's like, "It's very possible you'll break 3 hours based on this and this." And so, I did have that in my head for a hot minute, but then I, like, actually said it out loud to a person and they're like, "You no, like,
Oh,
that's
no.
part of the goal and for your first marathon." And I was like, "Well, it wasn't my goal. It was like, this could be possible. I'm open to whatever the day brings me." So then it made me kind of afraid.
Yeah.
Uh, ran without a watch and just did my thing and enjoyed the
Wow.
experience. Thankfully, I didn't bring it into race day, but I have a hard time expressing my goals out loud because I feel that whenever I've done so, I've gotten some negative feedback.
Well, people
No.
project. It's not necessarily, I guess, ill-intentioned, but it comes across and it's such a vulnerable state that you're in when you say, "Here's my goal," and yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'm
Yeah, so at
sorry
that
that
point
happened, and I'm glad you
no,
proved him wrong.
yeah, it's okay, and I think it's all part of my growing and my learning and my maturation in the sport, especially as being someone who, as I'm learning, I do enjoy feedback,
Mm.
and I like to hear what Zach thinks about things. I really have a hard time, and this has been my growth. My biggest growth has been through finding my own intuition as a runner and really putting aside the expectation of others and what I perceive they think I should do or
Mhm.
could do. But that has been kind of a journey for me to let go of the outward and really focus on what running needs to do to meet my satisfaction in the sport.
Oh, man. You put that so beautifully because I'm going through the same metamorphosis, but I never thought to put it that way. I'm gonna earmark that for a future episode. We could dive into that because, yeah, it is
Sure.
hard to know, like, you do want that feedback, but it also really should come from within with how you're feeling and what you think you can do and what's just really what's satisfying to you, what makes you happy.
'Cause I realized that no one cares about it as much as I
Mm.
do. As far as my stuff, there could be people that look up here and there what I'm doing, but I have to just let go of maybe disappointing people or causing some level of competition
Mhm.
because I'm like, let's everybody win, you know?
Yes.
And well, it always makes me, I don't, that element of running, it really is interesting because I feel like the marathon has been a really great space for me because I feel like there's more of that collective, let's go. And we're doing this together and we can all win when we reach our goals and we have these thriving training cycles. So I feel like the space of marathoners, distance runners, and really all runners, if we're looking at, 5K all the way up as adult runners,
Mm.
like we kind of find ourselves more rooting each other on.
Yes, and that's the way it should be, and it's still, like, and I talked to Andrea Pomeranski, who you've had on A to Z
But
earlier this week, and we talked about that, how to walk that fine line between being competitive, but also still, all boats rise and still being, supportive of one another. And you still want the other person, even if they are your competitor, to succeed. Yeah. We're all just out here trying to do our best and be our best. And if somebody runs a fast time, that doesn't take away from you and your goals.
I love that you said that. I've reflected lately. We've been talking about Steve Magnus's book, Do Hard Things. I know you follow Steve Magnus too, and how, the perception of challenges versus threats, and that can also mean our competition. And we had talked to Dakota Lindworm on our podcast. It was kind of a long time ago now, but she had mentioned that when someone comes up to her and starts challenging in a race, she always sees that as like, awesome, this person's gonna pull me along.
Yes.
Like seeing them as a threat, like, oh no, someone's passing me. She sees them as, hey, this is like awesome, great. Now I have someone to run with. This person's gonna help carry me. And I really liked that very practical implementation of perceiving a challenge rather than a threat.
Yes. Yes. And if you've ever run a race all by yourself, you would learn how wonderful it is to have somebody around you to pull you along. And just,
Absolutely.
yeah, you just feed off their energy and you can either surge and lose them and run faster, or you can work together. Yeah. Okay. So you run the 255 and then do you get pregnant again or?
You remember I was like so excited, right? I'm like, oh, let's get into this training. Zach agreed to coach
Oh,
me.
I would love to
Was
be a fly on the
thrilled.
wall of how that happened. You finally convinced him.
Well, I was like, well, I'm getting a coach. So it's either you or it's someone else. And he's like, oh, I want to coach you. Okay, okay. Yeah. Maybe putting the little bug of competition in his ear, like, I'm gonna go find someone elsewhere that will.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was fun, but at the same time, like, it was a week later that after the Bayshore Marathon that I ran that debut, I think it was a week later I was pregnant. My
What?
second
I
time.
didn't realize it was that quick of a turner.
It was so quick. I didn't know that week, but that's what it ended up being,
Okay.
and with the math of it.
So you were
So,
you were not pregnant though when you ran the 255.
no, I
Okay.
don't know. I don't believe so. No. Oh, yeah, I think that worked out. It was a week after, but then, pregnancies were rough on me and they were rough. They're difficult pregnancies. I had a rare condition that made the pregnancy dangerous for the baby. And so I didn't
Oh.
run as much as I would have loved to. Like I imagined in my head, like, oh, I see all these super fit moms, these pregnancies, and the women run all the way through. And that is absolutely possible for many of you out there. But for me, I was not able. I ran till I was 20 weeks and then I was having really terrible Braxton Hicks. And then
Oh.
I started getting the symptoms of my condition, which kept me from training, but I still walked a lot and I was still active. But that was disappointing for me because I think I had a vision. I thought if I tried hard enough and like I was dedicated enough that I'd have this like dream fit pregnancy. And that was not the case. That was not the case for me.
Yeah,
Um,
it's kinda I mean, it's very similar to when you're dealing with injury and your body just doesn't comply with what you want it to
mhm.
do, and yeah, and it's hard because you put it on yourself a lot of times even though it's not your fault.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It is a short amount of time. It feels really long when you don't get your running outlet.
Yes, it does feel very long.
But then afterwards, you're like, you know what? That was a blip. And I
Mhm.
learned so much. And coming back to it, the appreciation just really was magnified. And I think that the most difficult moments for me in my running journey are the ones that helped me most in my development. And I feel that I leveled up. Even if it took time, I leveled up because of the challenges that I was experiencing. And pregnancy was one of those challenges for me.
That is so beautiful, and I think what you said, the listeners, like, take that and put it in your brain and hold on to it because, I mean, I just think that is so true, and kudos to you for seeing it that way because, I mean, that's a lesson that will serve you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I found ways that running, as we have talked about many times, Whitney, how it has helped us in our character development beyond the sport of running. And it's been like such a valuable tool to help us in our widening of perspective. And I think that these challenges, and then also, an identity and who am I if I'm not a runner? Like, who am I if I'm not training like I normally do? And all these friends that I have in the running community, like, and really answering and wrestling those questions and finding our worth, our unshakable, undeniable worth beyond what we're doing in the sport of running. And it can be part of it, but there's so much more to life. And it just makes it sweeter when we get it back. That's for sure.
Oh, yes. Yes. I think, yeah, I think a lot of people struggle with injury because of two things, like you just said. I mean, being a runner often becomes part of our identity. And so we're just completely lost. And if that's your social outlet too, and then two, we tie so much of our self worth to these numbers, even though we know logically it shouldn't be that way, but it's still so hard. We still do that. So
Mhm.
injury has taught you not to do that.
Yeah, and my main goal is not the performance. That's not my main goal. It's fun and I like to chase hard things, but my main goal of running doesn't have to do with an outcome. It has to do with the process.
Yes.
And that's in your recent article about process goals. I thought that was an excellent article because it gives us tangible framework to like have the process be part of the success we find. It's like, no matter what happens, if I have a really crummy day in a race, look at what I did in my growth and development the past year because I was doing strength 2 times a week and I was doing core and I was getting reflection time and really becoming a more intuitive runner. And that no, like, that's still success, even if I had a bad day on my goal race day.
Oh, yes. Yes, totally. And I think when you aren't able to run, it gives you and obviously gratitude for the ability to run, but then also just the beautiful framework and structure that it does give our days because it's not only just the run, but then it trickles over into the energy you have for the rest of the day and healthy choices with eating and doing your mobility and etc. Okay, so you get pregnant, you aren't able to run, you have another beautiful boy,
Mm,
and then what happens?
yeah, it comes back. Running, thankfully, it doesn't always happen this way, but running came back to me pretty quickly, and I had to be patient, and I had to put the reins on because I felt better than what my body and the strength of my body was probably ready for. I had to put some reins on and be really patient. I ended up PRing in some events, like, only 5 months after, and
Wow.
so I got really excited because I was just in kind of base building, beginning conditioning type of work, and so it was exciting to see that, and as much as I like to say that it's all about these beautiful holistic things, it is fun to see fat times.
Right, yes.
Maybe. Yeah. There's the potential there and to get excited about racing again because I truly do love testing myself and seeing what I can do. So then I ended up with my first labrum tear in 2018. So things were going so well and I was clicking and things felt really good after the birth of my second son. And the labrum problem reared its head, which I hadn't realized, but I had chronic issues previous. So there was some sort of stress that I think caused a flare up. And at that point, I was diagnosed with my first labrum tear and rehabbed it, worked really hard, and was able to continue to train. I had to take a couple months off though after the flare up. That's usually recommended to get everything calmed down. And then was back into it again. And same thing happened with my right hip that flared up. A lot of it for me is genetic, which many people, the hip labrum tear is because of a genetic abnormality in the hip. So I
Oh.
had hip, like say, morphology of the femur head. So it was misshapen femur head that
Oh,
didn't
okay.
quite fit in the socket. But in addition to that, I had calcifications that often people will get for impingement too.
Ooh.
And so my bone was just, it's just rubbing against the labrum and the tear was painful. So at that point, I'm like, rehab worked the first time for a while. So let's do that again. And it created in me some really good habits. And it was very humbling. Like, I need mobility work. Thank you, Phil Wharton, because I seriously, I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Wharton mobility method, but like AIF using that, doing the mobility every day, multiple times a day. And I thankfully, I talked to my PT and he's great too, Adam Homolka at Endurance Rehabilitation in Michigan. And, they worked with me and it was a hard road, but like I was able to get to the best shape of my life and then, qualify in 2019. It was 6 months after I had taken a couple months off for my right labrum tear that I qualified for the Olympic trials in Chicago. In that race, it was much harder than that first marathon, let me tell you. Like,
So that was your second marathon?
it was my second
Wow.
marathon, and, again, I ran watch lists wanting to go by effort, but also knowing that there were pace groups. That also was part in my mind as well to know kind of gauge where I was, so I wasn't fading or accelerating in places that I shouldn't be. But that was much more challenging. Like, I felt the issues that I've been having and had to think about lifting my knee, all the things, like, uncomfortable, but successful. Like I
Mm.
achieved my goal, I exceeded the goal, but it was painful. And races are painful. And people have all kinds of things. You could put my injury and then it replace it with your injury in the marathon that you ran through it. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So it's not the ideal, but also I knew that the Olympic trial standards was probably going to be lowered and it might be my only chance. So I wanted to rehab and, shoot my shot, as they say.
Mhm.
And wait to consider the surgeries. So that was the fall of 2019 at Chicago. And then the trials were in February. And really, it was a lot of management. I had to get up during the night and do mobility because my hip would be so stiff and locked up.
Oh
And
my god.
I didn't train in the way that most people would train. Like, it's not what you would do for a healthy person. So, like, I couldn't do many hills and things because
Oh.
it would cause sort of aggravation. So, I did like steady states on hills, but I did do like a strength phase on hills. And that would have been helpful in
I
Atlanta.
know, I mean, that course then was, like, the worst for your injury.
Yeah, yeah. But one of those, it's like, it's all celebration. And I think that's kind of the perspective that I took that the trials would be a celebration.
Mhm.
And I wanted to do what I could to get there in a healthy state, knowing that, this is an opportunity and I wanted to soak in that experience as best as I could. So then, I did the trials and that was difficult.
Yes.
It's difficult. And
Warm and windy as well. I
yeah,
mean,
it's
there were a
more,
lot of factors.
yeah, and I was running modestly.
I remember you
And
going into it saying that you were not feeling great and that it wasn't like you were gonna go for a PR or anything like that.
yeah. Yeah, which is sad, to go into such a cool race not feeling that your
Mhm.
top perform potential, but I did enjoy the experience, and I think that having the modest approach served me well because I could finish.
Yes.
So that was good,
And you looked
and I
fabulous doing it too.
thank you, thank you. And my braid, not my face. No,
You gave us a big smile, I
yeah,
remember.
I was enjoying it. I was, and I did smile most of the way through. So it was a good experience. And then I decided to get the hip labrum, and I got both done. So that's kind of the story leading up until now. I'm back running.
So
Hallelujah.
you got the first surgery, was that last year or was that about a
It
year?
was March of 2021.
Okay.
I'm sorry, 2022. It was this year
Yeah.
or this past year.
Mhm.
The 2022 March, and then they stagger them
Mhm.
for better healing. And then I had my second one in June.
Okay. And so then I'm guessing you ran, walked, and you started back like
Yes.
in August or
September.
wow. I mean, you're already so fit.
I ran as slow as I needed to build up
Mhm.
my strength. And I was fully ready and willing to do the run walk as much as I needed to run, typically before surgery. I'd run like, 7:30s to 8s for easy days. And then after surgery, I was doing 10s and,
Mm.
10:30s. And sometimes I'd run 11-minute pace. And I didn't focus on it at all. I didn't even know until afterwards, but I tried to jog as easy as possible so that I could each day feel good. And that was our goal. That was the goal that I made with Zach is like every day of this building. I don't want to call it building because it was not part of like training. It's not
Right.
official, it's just I'm building this base as wide as I can, and I'm running as easy as I need to do to feel good every single day that I run.
And you were very dedicated too to the aqua jogging.
Yeah.
I mean, you
I
did
didn't
it
do
with your arms up. I mean,
yeah.
that it for a long time. I mean, that is just, I mean, physical strength and endurance, but also mental fortitude. My goodness.
That was a fun time. I actually really came to love aqua jogging, but that was not for my hip injury. I wasn't able to do aqua jogging for my hip
Okay.
injury. And some people can. I just had some hip flexor pain that I was struggling with. And aqua jogging requires a lot of, pull up against the resistance of the
Mm.
water. No, but I do like aqua jogging. I came to like it because if there are others at the pool, like you can chat. I'm talking about like my home pool, my little home circle pool, and I could talk to people and I can do my little aqua jogging thing while I'm still getting my social interaction. And like I can play with my kids like in the water, like I'll just like aqua jog to them and chat with them and like I'm moving around. But yeah, I do think that that was a good tool. As an injured runner, how many tools in our toolbox help us get through it and to strengthen and get back. So yeah, aqua jogging was great for I had a foot injury that I was using that for. So
So, I mean, if there ever comes a time when you're 85 years old, water aerobics going to be a very
yeah.
easy transition for you.
Yeah, yeah. As long as they have the warm water. You know how like sometimes there's like the warm
Yes.
water aerobics areas? Yes. Yes, I'll be all about that.
So I am amazed by how throughout all this, you seemingly maintained a positive attitude, finding the silver linings, having just like endurance in your mindset to know, okay, this is the spot that I am. I'm focusing on what I can do and knowing that it's not a permanent situation and not being dragged down with the why me? Why is this happening to me? Plus FOMO, the people that you're running with and watching them continue to their journey of fitness and getting PRs and everything. I would love to get inside your brain and know how you managed to do that. Or I'm assuming it wasn't as easy for you as it may seem on the outside. I mean, it's only natural to have kind of those dark periods.
Yeah, I anticipated it being a lot harder for me than it actually was psychologically, mentally, emotionally. And I really came in expecting that it would be a very, very dark time and it would be very long. And I think that the expectation that it was going to be difficult kind of set the stage for it exceeding my expectations,
Mm.
I guess. And so, and I really have to say, it really was grace because I have had anxiety throughout my life
Mm.
and I've managed a lot of it in with running and having that be my time of prayer and meditation. But I really was able to find a lot of joy and appreciation for many, many other things by just really opening my hands and letting go of some of the expectations for myself and also how things would go and how they would progress. So I do think there's a lot of grace. I feel like God gave me lots of grace to give me just what I needed, the joy I needed, the patience I needed. That being said, I do think the pain beforehand, the amount of discomfort, I should say discomfort. It was just kind of like always achy, always there. And then having the surgery and feeling some amount of immediate relief was also part of my ability, to be quite frank with you, my ability to be so positive because I did have like an immediate feeling of relief from that discomfort at night. I was able to sleep. And so I'd been so long of like waking up during the night and having to do this mobility just to be able to fall asleep. So I know that that's kind of the long answer to that question, but in general, like really, I do love watching other people excel in the sport. I do love the sport really beyond what I'm doing. And so being a coach, you can understand this too. Like me for coaching other athletes, I absolutely love that. And I can see what they're doing and not feel upset that I'm not doing it and really get engaged into what they need for their progression. And so I do think like, looking out was a big part for me, like looking out and being able to be an encouragement and still be part of the running community without running myself. And then I do think the expectations, letting go and giving myself the space I need to heal and knowing that it will be for my benefit to not rush. And then finally just the perspective and coming back to like what I'm doing this for and how I can have a thriving life within the realm of sports, but also just the day to day, being a mom, being in a career, and serving my community in the way I can.
Do anything on a daily basis that helps you hold on to that perspective? I feel like we, as human beings living our lives, we have these moments where everything snaps into focus. And then we get back into just our daily routine and we sort of lose sight of what's important. And when you're injured, I think it's very easy to kind of fall into that. So did you do, journaling, or you said maybe prayer and meditation time in the morning just to keep you in the right mindset?
I was part of a recovery program for my anxiety years ago, and that prayer that everyone knows from AA, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I probably repeat that 7 times a day.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's things I feel that I try to cling to that
Hmm.
are they don't have any support for me. They're not a lifeline, and I try to grasp for things, but to know, like, there are things that are out of my control, and just to be able to recognize it and process it really lets go like, it helps me let go of my anxiety about that specific issue. So, there'll often be things that I'm specifically thinking about when I let go of control and then find the thing that I can control. Specific things like, I have this presentation coming up, but I don't have my script yet. Well, I don't have my script yet. So, right, what can I do right now that will ease my burden later? So is there something I need to get done within that frame? Maybe I should pick up my dry cleaning and I should, do all these other tasks so that when I do get my script, I can study and be ready. So I guess it's a process of finding the things that I can do and will help me, which goes along again with your process goals article, the things I can control, and then really just trying to recognize and put an actual thought to the things that I'm letting go, not just kind of like taking a breath and letting it out, but what are the specific things that I feel are out of control that I'm grasping to control?
And when you're saying this, I'm thinking back, and that's beautiful. And I often tell myself in a abbreviated format, control the controllables. Don't try to control the
Huh?
things that are uncontrollable. As an injured person who especially has a large part of their identity, not their whole identity, rooted in running, And being fit, when you cannot run, things change. Your body changes. I mean, it's hard and I know it sounds vain, but you gain weight and you look at, I mean, I remember this and looking at myself, and it wasn't the end of the world. And I faced my fear, but it's still like you feel, you just start to view yourself differently, and letting go of that sort of control over your body, especially when it's not for a reason like you're growing a human. I think it's easier to do it when you're growing a human,
Mhm.
but it's just for the fact that you're not able to exercise like you usually do. Did you face that? And if you did, how did you reconcile that?
I was very humbled that I was so weak. I was so weak. It was hard. That was very, very hard for me. And I think too, because beyond the identity of being a runner, I also clung to being strong.
Mm.
Like I'm a person who is capable. And, I think I kind of lumped that all together.
Yeah.
And when I was exposed for the weakness, PT, when you go to PT and they're like, you can only do these 3 moves, and then they're challenging. And you're like, these 3 moves they're having me do when I start my rehab and they're challenging and they're basic. It's just very humbling. And I did struggle for absolutely, I struggled with the idea that I had once been here, I call it the Phantom Ponytail. And I've had this kind of imagery in my head for a long time of this girl and she's myself and I see her ponytail and she's always ahead of me and I can't catch up to who I was at that ideal moment in my life. And I chase after her and it's unattainable and it's frustrating and I compare myself to either something that I have been, this
Mhm.
I've achieved, or it's what I hope that I'll be. And I think during the time of injury, I was struck with that because it's like I'm so far from this phantom ponytail that I have created. And I try to say goodbye to, I try to abandon her, but she comes back because she's me.
Mhm.
It's an eternal struggle. And so, yeah, I think that, the piece of us that desires it's so good that we desire to be the best we can be, that piece of us that's so good, but at the same time to be in the reality of this discrepancy
Mhm.
and feeling that we need to catch up.
Mhm.
And the feeling of being in a rush and catching up has been a state of frenzy that I've experienced in a lot of aspects of my life,
Mhm.
but I see in running how it's been detrimental.
Yes.
I can't rush it. I
Yes.
can't.
You get into trouble when you rush it. That's so beautifully put. And I think people who are injured or will face injury, hearing from people like you who have experienced this and knowing that not only do you come out on the other side and you do catch up, you go past because you've learned so many lessons and you view things in such a better light because of these challenging times that you've had.
I learned how to do a glute bridge in the correct way.
There's
Guess
anything to come from this. I mean, that
I
is
know. I know that seems so like after this like big deep talk, but that's honestly though, it is amazing. Like this is a really what seems like an unimportant nuance that like changes everything we do. But I like this is what I wasn't doing. So I was doing the glute bridge without like first like activating my core
uh-huh.
and then lifting up. So I realized that I wasn't doing the core activation before lifting. And that changed the way that I did that. But yeah, there's things that we come out on the other side, not only in perspective, but actually really dialing in some of these things. I know that you worked on your hamstrings quite a bit. I see you crushing it, doing your pull ups. And there's so many things. It's like now we see the importance of all the little things and how they add up to the big things. So I've appreciated seeing your journey, Whitney, and how you've done it with so much grace and with so much, I guess, investigation of how to do things better. It's like the journey of continuous improvement.
Right. I mean, thank you for saying that. It's one of the big lessons I've learned is that the little things really do matter. And
Mhm.
like you said, do not try to rush the process. Don't try to catch up. Just be in it, enjoy it, love the process. And
Mhm.
yes, I am so much stronger than I was before I got injured because I know the importance. And I think I was able to come back after such a long time and run PRs because I've worked on my strength when I was when I couldn't do anything else for a while. Pull-ups were the only thing I could really safely do. So put the pull-up bar in the playroom and I did that. Did you ever struggle with from time to time just thinking, being around running, I know you love the running community and it fills you up so much. Thinking, this hurts too much. I just want to withdraw this being around it. Or did you knew that you needed to force yourself to stay connected to the running community, to coach your athletes, to go to races, even if you couldn't run, because you knew that would fill your cup, even if you couldn't be there participating.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that I'm so grateful. I don't think it's really of myself. I think it's really something that, I've wanted to process and make whole again in me, if that makes sense, that I really have enjoyed the running community. Even in my injury and the times that I can't participate, I haven't felt an intense amount of sadness. I have to say, I did cry on the way to Bayshore Marathon last year. I had just gotten off of crutches, I
Mhm.
think. Well, no, I was off crutches a few weeks, but I wasn't doing any, I wasn't
Mhm.
able to do, I was still in a phase of not doing too much. And since that was my first marathon, and I had emotion there, I cried, but then like as soon as I was there, I was just totally filled up by the energy and I wasn't thinking about myself.
Yeah.
But I did have a moment, and I think that we do process those. And I think maybe the reason that I've been able to enjoy it is because I identify it and I don't like push it aside. I just like see, I guess I accept it and I'm like, okay, this is sad. And then move on.
Right. Yes.
You know, sit and move on.
I do think that if you are sad, even if it seems like the opposite of what you want to do, going to a race will quickly pick you up. No matter what you're sad about. I think the race vibes are just they're unparalleled. I went last year to kind of the scene of the crime to Indy where I ran with my torn hamstring to support my friend. I kind of crewed her and I think my husband was like, are you going to be okay doing that? And I was like, yeah, I think so. And yeah, sure enough. I mean, it was amazing. I was so thrilled to be there supporting her, to be cheering on the other runners and seeing just so many amazing, just like, just fast times and camaraderie. And just, I mean, I don't know. It's super inspiring, even if you cannot run. So we were talking before we press record about kind of some of our self protective habits when we get back into the sport. For instance, I'm very careful about even now, still, 8 months back to running, who I run with because I don't want to be caught running too fast. And do you do things like that? Or are there other kind of self protective measures that you take to make sure you stay healthy?
Yeah. This is something I had to start implementing even before injury. I have had some very fast friends. And so I've had to set boundaries because I realized, one of my injuries came from running too fast too often. I think everyone's nodding along as
Right.
like
Yeah.
embarrassing it
It's a rite of
or trick.
passage.
But that, a couple of years ago, I really started to have to say, like, I protect it and say, hey, you can go ahead if that's what you need to do today. This is kind of where my limitations are and stick to it. And it's so awkward sometimes. You're just like, go ahead,
Mhm.
like,
Yeah, because then there's like the dance, like, no, are you sure? No, really, it's okay. Are you, Yeah. Been there.
yeah, yeah. I also think too that it's tricky because I feel like I can do it,
Right.
because you can. But then the next day when you're supposed to be doing your workout, you're not gonna be completely recovered for it.
Mhm.
So then you have the, accumulation of fatigue. You're not getting the adaptations and you're working really hard, but you're not seeing the fruition of your work. And so yeah, I've had to really, set boundaries that way. But then coming back from injury, I haven't started doing workouts until recently. I'm doing some steady states and some fartleks, and I have to do those by myself. And because especially, and I have always really done my steady states and my fartleks by myself because I need to really be in tune with what's going
Mhm.
on with my body and like learn the feelings of discomfort and learning to read the signals of my body and then also create the toolbox that I need to overcome that. So then in a race situation, I'm able to as well. So yeah, I've had to put those boundaries in place and I'll even text people and be like, hey, I'm happy to go as slow as possible, but I'm not going to go faster than this.
Right.
So
Yes.
kind of articulating it and communicating in the best way that I can.
Yeah, I think for some people, it can be hard to start to put that ego aside. and learn. Just because you can does not mean that you should.
Mhm.
Really need to balance.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's an individual sport in so many ways, and one big way is that we have individual needs for our training and what's best for us, and just remembering that.
Yeah, and then, I think that helps too with I think you were talking to Neely Gracie about, like, cue words and talking to yourself and having this dialogue within yourself, and I know Steve Magnus writes about it. I think many sports psychologists do, but learning to talk to yourself and having this relationship with yourself, and I feel like when you get back to running, it's almost like you're dating again. Yes, we know each other, but, like, let's get reacquainted with this discomfort and how we're gonna discuss how is this internal dialogue gonna go, and you kinda get back into a rhythm of self-talk because that was one of the biggest challenges. I hadn't run a hard run in 2 years. I haven't raced since the Olympic well, no, I did, but I hadn't raced, like, hard since 21. So, anyway, I hadn't done any workouts in a couple years, and that feeling of discomfort when it came in, I had to retrain my brain. So I think running those and getting reacquainted with myself was important before I can then plug in and be an asset to the running community, running with others.
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent point because when you face it for the first time in a long time, it is very easy to freak out and panic. Be like, oh, no, I don't like this. This is, and your body thinks or your mind thinks, this is harmful. I need to stop doing this. And just learning to kind of coax your way through it and know it's okay. And let's be curious and see what happens if I push a little bit harder, if that's what the workout spells out. That's a wonderful point. And I've talked to a lot of people recently about how they actually enjoy working out by themselves too, because it does help them kind of dial into truly how they're feeling and how to manage that discomfort. Are there any other lessons that you want to share with our listeners from your journey?
I think that coming back to the idea of challenges versus threats, I think all of it and everything that we do, we can see things as either a challenge to overcome or a threat that makes us shut down. And in the balance of that, also identifying the things that are disappointing and feeling the feelings and going through what we need to do to come out on the other side with a deeper, greater, more profound perspective on things. But I do think, there's so many things, and we've talked so much about this, Whitney, and I've appreciated the camaraderie in the injury realm
Mhm.
to really look at these things, see them for what they are, feel, like I said, feel the feels, but then what is the challenge there? How can I grow and improve and find satisfaction beyond the PR if I'm still a year out from being able to get back to that fitness? What are the things along the way that are going to bring me joy about this sport? I just feel like there's so much there when it comes to our perspective on these challenges that we face as injured runners.
Oh, you're so right. There's just so much beauty in this sport. It's not just about the PR and how fast you can run or how far you can run. There's just a bevy of things. So you're right to really try to shift your focus to that while you're able to build your fitness back up. And I was thinking this morning on my run how we are always in this state being a work in progress as a runner because we're never complete. We're always trying to perfect it. And it's interesting because, the sport attracts so many type A people who are perfectionists, but we're always working on something. And sometimes, the baseline is different and just, recognizing again that we're all in this together and yeah, feel the feels. I know I didn't feel better until I let it out because for the longest time also felt guilt because, I'm like, well, it's not like a life threatening illness. I mean, I should be so grateful for everything that I can do, but it's a life altering situation when you're injured, when being a runner is such a large part of your life and your social connection. And so I also encourage people to continue to stay connected to your run friends. And I was very grateful to have run friends who continued to check on me, even though I was injured during the pandemic as well. And so we weren't able to see each other, but still staying connected just it helped. And so if you have a friend that's injured, check in on them. Even though you're not seeing them for those group runs, still ask them how they're doing because they need you to.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And it reminded me, I wanted to share, I haven't shared this with anyone yet, but it's my mantra for this year. It came to me. I was reading the other day and I thought I would share it with all of you. And I looked down And I don't often check on my watch. I try to run if I feel and not check very often, but I had some bad feedback. Like I thought I was running really fast
Uh-huh.
and I looked, the effort was correct, but the time was not matching what I thought
Mhm.
the effort be. And I thought to myself, it's coming, Andy, and good things are happening right now.
Oh, I love
So
that.
that's my mantra is good things are happening right now. And these things that I want are coming. They're coming. I can feel them coming.
To me, it kind of ties into spring. Right now we don't see what's happening underground. We don't see that the flowers are starting to push up through the soil, but it's coming. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that
Yeah.
so much. Well, thank you so much for sharing all these wonderful epiphanies that you've had and lessons. I know that this conversation has really helped me, and I probably will listen to it multiple times because I think it's useful not only if you're in a tough spot with injury, but just a tough spot in general. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Whitney. And thanks for all that you've done, bringing your injury conversation into the sport and helping us all through it
Oh,
as mother runners and beyond, and all the other runners listening.
thank you, Andy.